Well, hello. Thank you for watching this video. Appreciate your time and supporting the Iron Harvest community. Today there was a big update. Big update. I would say a really confident update from King Art Games this February. As you can see here, we have improved response time. One of the key piece of feedback we received from you is that you wanted faster response times between you issuing orders and the units undertaking them. Thanks. No, thank you. And now we have done just that. Responses time has been roughly halved, so your orders should feel slicker. I have tested this out in the last couple of games, and it definitely does feel better. Which is actually was a really huge problem when this game came out. In fact, Day 9 sort of showcased this when he was trying the game out for the first time. For whatever reason, units that are hotkeyed to a control group, and then you spam in between those different control groups, issuing orders to each one, for whatever reason, that input would get eaten up, and that feels way better now. It's way more snappy, way better. You can spam through your hotkeys a little bit faster now to give it units commands. So it's a great change. It's like a really huge change, especially for an RTS game where all you do is hit the buttons. So that was I think one of the biggest updates or changes in this update, and it's I think pretty significant. Um, Importantly, all of today's changes inevitably erased all your saved game files, rip game files. So if you have saved games, they're gone for the campaign. Let's see here. Infantry can now fire at targets that were initially blocked by resource and production buildings, aid stations, and bunkers. This should improve combat close to buildings and in bases considerably. I didn't really think this was a problem. I didn't know it was a problem because I thought running around buildings and stuff and resource nodes, um, those things blocking line of sight, I thought that was just part of the game. Like, it made sense to me. It seems like it seems like they still do block some line of sight, but the edges are not quite so rigid as they were before. Um, so it's going to be easier to shoot infantry capturing things and stuff like that. So interesting change, and they're confident that it's going to feel better. So who doesn't like feeling better, you know? Smaller mechs can now crash through smaller gate structures. I don't know what a gate structure is in the game. Maybe this is a campaign thing, but cool. Mechs with indirect weapons that ignore line of sight, like artillery and things like that, can no longer fire at targets when they disappear into the fog of war. Makes sense. Resolved an issue that could lead to an online connection issue after an hour of continuous gameplay. Sweet. Nice quality of life. Fixed an issue that prevented Wilhelm from aborting his layaway stability correctly. Quality of life. Improved the animation of Zubob's death from above ability. We'll get back to. I think the keyword here is improved, and we'll see later what they actually did to it. I think improved is not the right word, and you'll see why. A Jagged Peaks 2v2 map updated to correct inaccuracies. Inaccuracies because everything is a game of chess. Fixed an issue whereby weapon systems could not abort their retreat if all paths to base were blocked. I mean, that seems like a pretty niche scenario where literally every single path is blocked. But cool, okay. Isogram cannons no longer twitch and behave oddly while the mech is idle. Basically, the gunner in the Isengrim, they took his radio away. Fixed an issue that prevent the Russian Revolution bonus campaign missions from loading properly. This was something that I saw on the Reddit where people were trying to play the campaign, the extra DLC, and they just couldn't. So this is really nice. Fix an issue preventing mouse scrolling unless cursor placed directly over menu window. I love it. This is something that I could not stand. This is the best quality of life ever. Thank you. Generic volumetric effects improved. Don't know what those are. If you know what they are and you're happy, I'm happy for you. prevented the strategic position indicator from appearing at the start of dominance mode games. I don't know what that is either. Strategic position indicator. I don't know what it is. I've probably seen it, never realized it was out of place. So just a little bit, polish. A little bit of polish. Prevented Anna, when playing on easy difficulty in the first Polonian mission, Anna's shot, for being able to target and attack the first boy she encounters after he's been defeated. Who's the bully now, huh? Basically, Anna no longer throws snowballs relentlessly. I mean, was that really an issue? Wouldn't it have been like a nice feature? Anyways, the boys in the first Polonian mission now correctly become invisible when running into the fog of war. Makes sense. They're nerfing Anna's X-ray vision basically in the campaign. We've completed our assessment of the game's balance based on your feedback in the recent tournaments. This week largely focuses on the infantry gameplay experience. We'll then monitor things over the next 2 weeks and make adjustments and more mech focus changes in the next update. Yeah, this is all infantry focus, which I mean, the beginning game and the infantry game affects how you get into the mech game and later on. This is huge. Headquarter units. The meta of building your riflemen, stormtrooper, or vanguards until a player reach pop cap has stolen much of the attention that other infantry units deserve. Removing them from the HQ in line with the other infantry to choose from when the barracks are built. Therefore, removed riflemen and all the other infantry from the HQ. You can only build engineers out of your HQ. That is a huge change. The early game is completely different. The meta is in shambles. It's not the same anymore. Now, does this make, right, because they wanted to do this because they wanted other infantry units more time, more attention, right? More attention that they deserve. Does this mean that you're going to see more flamethrowers or more medics? Probably not. Probably not. Just I don't think it fixes the issue that they see with other infantry units being outshined by the base infantry. But it does significantly change how the early game functions. So at the very least, it's breaking up the monotony of playing RTS. Starting squads to accommodate for the loss and to speed up the very similar first minutes of gameplay of game player. We added another squad to the starting game player. Added another starting squad units. Therefore, everyone begins with one more infantry squad, one more base, one more rifleman, one more guard or trooper. Again, huge thing. Completely changes how the game works at the beginning of the game. Having 3 squads to command at the start changes how you go out and conquer resource nodes and things like that. So I think it's great, and having more things at the start of the game adds more options, more choices, which is essentially more strategy. Strategy is choices to the players. So I think with 2 more combat squads, I think there's a lot more potential for early game aggression and things like that. So I think potentially some grenade steals on some maps could be more viable now. And there's much more options on how players can strategize about how they want to economize and be aggressive at the start of the game. So I think this is really cool, really bold, really interesting design choice. Just to change it and see how it goes. General infantry cost rebalanced. Due to their dying so quickly to advanced mechs, infantry can be a sunken cost during the mid and late game. We also want to give players more reason to upgrade their barracks and better reflect the unit's relative power level. I think the key word here is relative, right? Because here we can see base infantry cost increased by 25 iron. So at the early game, they're saying the relative power level of infantry is good, so their cost is increased. Right, Grenadier cost is increased from 5 oil to 10. Saxony medic though reduced from 150 to 100 iron. Now, aside from everything else, this is happening because the medics suck, right? Medics are not good. But this for Saxony, kind of neat. Does this make medics good again? No, it does not. But it does add some niche scenarios where Saxony will be building medics, getting weapon systems off the map. Awesome. Saxony will build a medic to do that. Getting the a gunner cache or a flamethrower cache or anything else on the map that or any sort of weapon that that can be picked up. You're going to build a medic to do it, right? So that's a nice little economic advantage potentially. It is slow, obviously, to build a unit, walk it across the map, pick something up, then get that unit into the fight. But still, economic. So this, though I don't think it makes a huge difference for the medic, it will be utilized. Um, and even though things may not affect the meta necessarily, seeing this for a player means that they're going to definitely going to like try and have like inspiration. Like they're going to try new builds and new ideas because they see this upgrade or change. Rusev flamethrowers cost decreased from 275 to 225 iron. Same thing with the medic. Trying to make them more viable. Is that really going to be the case? Probably not. All the issues with the flamethrowers and why they're how they fundamentally don't work are still there. But again, even though it doesn't affect the meta too much, this might inspire someone to go, hey, you know what? Let me try the flamethrower out again. Let me try and push the envelope here, and I think that's good, especially in a game right now that is lacking player base. Having players experiment as much as possible with builds and timings is really really good for the game because um, when something is finally discovered, like hey, this works, this is cool. Um, that can be really impactful for affecting the meta and diversifying the meta. Polonian machine gunners cost decreased from 300 to 75, 25 decrease, a nice little buff. Does it matter? It's the same thing. Same thing as the flamethrower. People might try it out again. Does not really fix what's wrong with the Polonian machine gunner. Just because in the reality is like the rifleman, the storm guard, the vanguard, they're all better than the machine gunner, and they already cost 75, 50 less. Therefore, all Tier 1 infantry units become cheaper to build in the advanced barracks. So this is another huge thing. When you upgrade your advanced barracks, or when you upgrade your barracks to become advanced, engineers cost 50 less. The base infantry cost 100 less. Grenadiers cost 100 less and 5 oil less. The medic costs 75 iron. It's so cheap. Rusev flamethrowers 150. The gunner 100 less, 5 oil less. This is really interesting because before you simply got the advanced barracks because you needed to get your reserve 2 out. That was about it. Pretty rarely you would build a heavy machine gun or a machine gunner, because all you really cared about, everything that you really needed was in tier 1: the gunners and the field cannon. But now that some of those things get an additional decrease in cost, do they become more relevant in the late game? Not really. Again, you'll see medics running around because they're super cheap to pick things up and capture things. So nice little desperation, run it across the map, capture a flag or something. Grenadiers. Maybe we'll see more grenadiers in the late game to counter weapon systems and I don't know, light mechs and stuff with the grenade. but probably not a whole lot. Rifleman, Storm Guard. This is kind of neat, because if you don't want to spend 75 iron or the Engineer's 100, they do walk a little bit slower. So if you're in the need for speed, 125 is your new number. Um, so again, this just adds a little bit of flavor, potential like ideas and inspiration for players to try new builds out. I do I do think that this might give hope, a little bit of hope, to potential infantry all-ins. Right. Before going infantry only to try and win the game, very very tough. Really did not work. Um, any player who could delay or even break even with you and just buy time to get their workshop out, like infantry fall off almost immediately as soon as any of the tier 2 mechs come out. But it does give hope, I think, to potential infantry only builds. I think the biggest effect here is the gunner, because in the late game, the gunner is the most relevant unit of all the infantry. So 100 less on a gunner, 5 oil less. Kind of nice. So you might see a couple more gunners out. Um, does it really affect late game mechs still with the gunner? Not really, because the gunner is not the answer to any of the late game mechs. But the light mechs, though, um, this is kind of huge. Building an advanced barracks is a great way to deal with a workshop first and things like that. But yeah, so this is kind of cool, neat thing. I think this is a big buff to the gunner, and we might see more gunners squeezed into builds, things like that. I guess another thing to note too, because the headquarters removed from the headquarters is the base rifleman and stuff like that. Um, I think that really significantly hurts going workshop first because you can't build any more infantry. Like you're reliant on having to kill enemy infantry and then pick it up with an engineer. So I think going workshop first can be really really dangerous now against somebody who goes barracks first, because gunners, even if you're building a 275 gunner's still great against light infantry, or light mechs. So going workshop first is super dangerous now, and will really end up struggling against like infantry swarms, infantry balls, things like that. So overall, neat. Should hopefully inspire players. Definitely will see more infantry, but I don't think it'll be super relevant. Overall, I think this kills workshop first and gives hope to some infantry only builds. Polonia. This is what everyone's been waiting for. The nerfs. Anna's damage against armored unit targets felt too high, and the bear wouldn't die even after Anna was defeated. Anna's damage versus light armored targets 30 to 20. I think that's fair. I mean, 20 damage is still a lot. Still a lot. It's still a decent amount of damage for a single infantry unit to be doing. And plus, she still has the bear, whacking it. The bear running around punching mechs and stuff. The bear's health reduced from 500 to 400. I think that's fair too. Anna's super strong. I think Anna was able to kill. I think Clara was telling me that Anna was able to pretty much solo 3 squads for the most part behind cover. Like Anna versus 3 squads was a good matchup. With these changes, Anna and her bear can probably take on 2 squads. So nice little nerf. Anna's still a great hero. You're still going to see Anna. She's still relevant. This is not an issue. Just more fair now. With new abilities, Let Cost has become a powerhouse that now deserves the reserve cost of 2 coins. Technically a nerf, but not really. Because when you would get Lek, you would put either 2 Zulls or 2 Lokas, which before he was 1 coin, so that would cost you 5. So you'd have 1 coin left over to put an engineer or an artillery unit into your R1. But that was pretty irrelevant because when you're running a reserve 2, you'd almost never get the reserve 1 later on. Like the only time you get the reserve 1 is in the hyper super late game, You need the extra 5 population. That's it. That's the only reason why. You put an engineer in there because in the late game you need engineers to repair. So this is technically a nerf, but it's pretty irrelevant. Really, it will not, like, almost will never make it's not going to feel like anything's changed. So they try to nerf Lek, but not really. So Lek is still super strong. If you can get Lek on top of anything, he'll punch it. He'll punch it to death. Rifleman suppression. Riflemen were able to suppress more effective than other quick-firing weapons. Reducing this effect should feel more intuitive now. I don't know about like it feeling intuitive or not, but yeah, rifleman suppression was kind of insane. So reduce suppression per bullet from 6 to 3. That's fair. I think that's fair. The optimal number for like instant suppression for riflemen was 3. You needed 3 riflemen to pretty much one volley would almost suppress a squad instantly if they were caught out in the open. With this, it's probably somewhere between like 5 and 6, right? Because they reduced it in half, so you're gonna have to double the squads needed. So 5 to 6 will be needed to do an instant suppress. Um, and now you'll need like 2 to 2.5 volleys to do an instant suppress if you have 3 riflemen. 3 riflemen, 2.5 volleys. So I think that's a fine and fair uh, nerf. More intuitive because obviously machine guns should suppress, rifles should not. So it makes sense, feels fair. The Strats Spider Mech. I always call this a Doctor Who bot. That's what I think. Doctor Who bot. The use of this mech was far too flexible for its reserve cost when compared to its Saxony counterpart, the Grimbart. Therefore, the reserve cost 2 to 3. 2 to 3 coins now in the reserve one. Makes sense again. Completely, it removes the meta that was Anna double strats because it was so strong. So strong. Especially against R2 reserves, where like all you have is infantry to defend, and then your opponent gets 2 anti-infantry mechs out. So this makes sense. It's still strong, still decent, but you can only have one, which just makes sense. Uh, the Zol, the bunker with foots. Walking and firing is great, but it's still very hard for players to come up with a counterplay, even when prepared. So they reduce its health by 100. The bunker is pretty strong. It's super strong. It can attack and move, and it's super fast. It can retreat and get away almost no matter what. Like if you're losing bunkers, you've probably made a mistake, or you're sacrificing it for like a specific objective. Otherwise, bunkers are immortal. This changes nothing. Other than that, you'll have to retreat your bunker 100 health sooner. So not a big deal. The Tur, Mega Mech. One part of making infantry more viable for the whole match is to reduce the Tur's ability to wipe them out in one shot. Therefore, the Tur's splash damage against unarmored and splash radius has been reduced. Damage decreased from 80 to 45, almost half of it again. Splash radius reduced from 7 to 5.5. I mean, I don't think that there was a huge issue with Tur versus infantry. But in one sense, if you managed to keep your infantry alive, you got those nice elite storm guard running around. Yeah, one Tur would just mess them up. Well, now it's going to be half the case now. So not a huge deal. Not going to affect the meta too much. Gunners are not going to be the answer to fight a Tur anyways. Though I guess gunners will survive one more shot now. And reducing the splash. So this is fine. Not really a nerf so much. Technically a nerf, but the Tur is still going to be great to shoot things with. The rusev. So they mentioned this already. Jump time adjusted to better fit the animation. Not entirely sure what that means. I thought the animation looked fine. Maybe the damage was applied right before it hit the ground. But this is technically a nerf. Airtime increased from 3.19 to 3 seconds. So Zubov is going to be hanging 10 up in the sky for just a little bit longer, and which means he won't be able to land sooner and start doing stuff, you know? So, not really too big of a deal, but technically a nerf. But they nerfed it because they wanted it to be more aesthetically pleasing, more aesthetically make sense. Yeah, that's about it. Season 3 starts. Look at the tryhards, and there's some nice like new cosmetic things coming out and stuff like that. But you can find this link on the Reddit and whatnot. I'll post a link to this page specifically on this video. So that's about it. Yeah, really only infantry stuff somewhere in here. They are the next update that's coming out this month is going to be for mechs, late game mechs, workshop stuff. Very cool. The infantry game is in shambles. Everyone's trying to figure it out how it works. Um, Things to note: early game aggression has more options, more viable. There's hope for infantry only builds. Workshop first is potentially dead, and Polonia is still strong because the riflemen were like barely touched. But at the least it's going to feel a little bit more fair. Um, so yeah, I think it's a great time to come back and try it out. Thank you for watching.